Thank you. Again, this is session 6, Construction Documents Part 3 Project and Delivery Education Program. And I will be the instructor for this portion. And I appreciate all of the attendance here today. This is AIA CEU accredited course for HSW. And the information you see there is what you see for every CEU course. In our learning objectives, I think it's very important to understand the differences between procurement documents and contract documents. Kind of a information mental tickler for you would be the Tower of Power, which you see in Figure 111.1 of the Project Delivery Practice Guide. This thing's been around a long time, but it really gives you a good idea of document structure. In our session outline, construction documents, we're going to be going through a number of different subjects, coordination between graphic and written documents, what methods, ways of specifying, specifications language, the hierarchy we have for general administrative and procedural requirements, the two formats that have been developed by CSI for structuring specification sections, the actual section format itself, and also the formatting we would have for pages within a specification section. And we're going to end up with warranties and insurance. Construction documents, coordination between graphic and written documents. Now, the coordination between graphic and written documents is very critical. This has been previously stated that there should only be one person ultimately responsible for coordination effort. And then generally that's the AE responsible for the project, or it could be the project coordinator or some other person who is designated by title for this responsibility. Now this is, and I should stress this, it's a big ticket item, and if the coordination is not done, there will possibly be some embarrassment to you as design professionals, and also possible unintended and very negative consequences that could result. It's important that the specs are read and that they are edited carefully before they are issued. Cannot stress that enough. Once it goes out, you own it. The AE in charge of the project should, and really it's kind of a mandatory thing, have a meeting or more than one with the specifier during the course of the preparation of the contract document. Coordination between graphic and written information, and this could be a test question. Drawings and specifications are complementary. What is required of one is required by all. Now, the level of detail between the documents must be consistent. Preliminary drawings should be included with outline specifications. And this is becoming more and more important as we get into design build scenarios where information, more complete information, needs to be provided earlier in the project. But it's just a great practice that when you have your preliminary drawing, that you do have your outline specifications to begin to define standard workmanship and quality of the materials.
And a point to remember to that case is CSI has what they call their preliminary project description. You're in the schematic design phase. It's not outline specs. It's a good test question, but preliminary project description to help define that.
Now, consultants are required to coordinate their own drawings and to coordinate among themselves. Obviously, a mechanical sub would coordinate with an electrical sub, and a landscaping sub would coordinate with a civil sub. Sub-consultants prepare their own specs. You want to make sure that headers and footers match and are consistent. That may seem like a small thing, but it's not. That goes to the overall philosophy of how a project manual is put together. The other point to note is that other components of consultant specifications are consistent with the office practices and procedures for putting together the total volume of documents. And I would reference once again the Tower of Power to look at all the elements that go into it, and they must be consistent. Generic notes should be used on the drawing. Do not list manufacturer names. Underscore that 3 times. Specs will have more qualitative detail about the products to be utilized. Coordination between graphic and written information. Using a phrase, reverse specs, or see section 087100 is not necessary on the drawings. Should never appear. These are good intentions. They may have unfortunate consequences. Again, we're looking at documents that are complementary. And once again, and of course this is going to be a test question, and this goes for everything that we're going to talk about today and also your other sessions. The 4 C's of CSI: clear, complete, concise, and correct. The specs and schedules will be listed in Part 3, which is commonplace for their location. Now, sometimes they may be on the drawing. That is an important item of coordination with the project architect to make sure that there's an understanding about where these things will be going. The same holds true for abbreviations. Every office practice is different. Now, in public projects, it's a common practice to state that large-scale details take precedence over smaller-scale drawings, and specifications take precedence over the drawings. However, this really should be avoided. It is not a good practice.
You'll see that, especially on a lot of government projects. They'll try to create this level of importance and try to remember that the drawings and the specs and all the documents are complementary and all included within the contract. So if there's a discrepancy, then the contractor is supposed to ask for an interpretation. He's supposed to issue an RFI in order to get an answer to it.
Correct. Coordination between graphic and written information. Now, a good method for checking specifications and drawings is to use a master list of specification sections or a well put together checklist. And the specifier should review the drawings with the job captain, project architect, or that individual that's been assigned to the overall running of the project. Now, items not shown on the drawings or in the scope of work should be eliminated or edited from the specs. That is
one of the biggest no-nos out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we talk about good intention. And if you have a question about that, you ask somebody. You make sure that things are not there that should be there and vice versa. Now, a list of possible conflicts or spec issues is summarized, and you can see that on screen. These are all common omissions, overlap, conflicts and discrepancies. That can be a big one, especially when the project is in construction. Incompatible materials, difficult construction methods, or those that are impossible. and we've all seen some of those. Incorrect or unspecified materials. Errors in defining areas of construction phasing, which is now that's becoming more and more important, especially in design build work, and it's something you probably really need to pay attention to. Errors in defining the limits of work. Errors in identifying work by the owner or work that is not in the contract. Inaccurate or unnecessary cross-referencing, and again, this gets back to the complementary nature of the components of the project, the drawings and specifications. You've got to be very careful with that. You know, they are complementary. You say it one place, you say it once only. Avoid cookie cutter specs and manufacturer's generic specs. Do your homework. That is also very important. There's seems to be, and this tends to be in the rush to finish a project, whether it's going out to bid or there needs to be an immediate answer to an RFI, to use a manufacturer's spec. A manufacturer's spec may adhere to some or all of the CSI principles and practices, the specifications writing, but it's still their spec, and they write it in a certain way because they are selling their product.
And what you typically see in a manufacturer's spec is that it's really, really weak on both fabrication and installation requirements.
Correct.
And that's what will come back to haunt. And then just to keep in mind that, again, fixing these errors up front, you know, I think I stated this last time, was when I was with another company and we were doing analysis, it took 4 to 8 times the amount of time to issue a addendum rather than just spend your time using drawing. And it takes 20 times the amount of time to fix a problem once it's actually gone out to bid and it's under construction.
That's correct. That's a variation on an observation that was made a long time ago about contracting. Why do it right when you could do it over?
Now, I talked a little bit about methods of specifying the last time, and I gave some examples and said that Steve's going to cover it in more detail.
Okay, and very well could be a test question on methods of specifying. Now, there are generally 4 types: descriptive, performance, reference standard, and proprietary. And under proprietary, there are 3 subcategories as you can see on screen. Now, specifications may include 1 or more of these methods. Usually it's more than 1. You know, it could be 2, 3, it could be 4. You could have a reference standard for a product and a descriptive method used for another accessory or a subcomponent. You could also have language, concerning performance. What is it intended to do? Most specifications will have 2 or more of these methods of specifying, and that's probably the way to go, and that's the way to get a more complete picture for a particular item or component that is going to be specified. Now, methods of specifying: descriptive. Proprietary or product names are not used in this type of spec. It's very important. Just a description of the element or product. And this is very common in the public sector or DoD type projects where specific products cannot be listed. I think an analogy an obvious analogy would be if you were to go into let's say a Home Depot or a Lowe's and you're looking for a window. And how would you talk about it? What would you say, as a lay person? And some of these very things would come to mind. These are like basic checklist questions that you would have in trying to provide a descriptive specification. Another method is the performance. And this is a very important slide. And a performance spec outlines criteria and the end or required result and criteria for verifying or basis of acceptance. There's no limitation on the means or method. A couple of examples would be this. Let's say you had an industrial warehouse shell building which required what would be called a super flat concrete floor with extreme tolerance for levelness and flatness. You would add something like verbiage such as measured in a radius of 10 feet with no more variance than 1/8 of an inch. Or cabinet doors, being capable of swinging out to 120 degrees and doing so without failure for at least 20,000 uses. Another method is by reference standard. ASTM, UL, NFPA, AWC-NDS, National Design Spec for Wood Construction. There's a number of industry associations that have these standards. A very, very common one is the Tile Council of North America, and they're commonly referenced within specifications. An example would be such as NWWD, and this is a reference standard for the National Wood Window and Door Association. And some of these are consensus standards. They're quite valuable. Of course, you have to review them for specificity for a particular project, but they are, some of these are very, very good.
As I noted before, keep in mind that like ASTM standards are really providing you the industry minimum, because it is identifying these standards are developed by multiple manufacturers getting together and finding out what is their lowest common denominator amongst all their products. So thinking that you're going to have, super fine product simply because you're specifying a reference standard is a fallacy.
Correct. Proprietary specification.
These are the easiest to write.
Absolutely. Extra heavy-duty waste bins, HAFLA 502.73.922, pull-out door-mounted waste bin with integral metal lid. Not exciting, but it says what it says, and you established that basis of design. That's what it's going to be, and it really serves as a benchmark for other products that might be submitted for approval, those that would be comparable.
If you have an open proprietary.
That is correct. Now, the disadvantages in proprietary specifying is that competition is reduced or eliminated, and the contractor may be unfamiliar with the product. Now, the second one is interesting because there are more and more new products that are coming into the marketplace every single day. They could be driven by sustainable design. They could be products, from other countries that are available in this country with expanded trade agreements. There's just quite a bit out there to take in.
This is the description between the difference between a closed and open spec. Basically, the big difference is closed. You only want that product. Or maybe you identified a couple of quote-unquote basics. An open product, you're giving a basis of design, and then you're allowing the contractor to potentially use another product by another manufacturer, but you're the one who's going to deem whether or not it's.
In this selection of a proprietary method, open specs will require more work on the part of the EAE. However, competition is keenest when substitutions are allowed. using the basis of design product listing is the common method for listing a single source product. Methods of specifying non-restrictive. Any specifying method or combination, can be used of those that have been described before. Descriptive and performance methods are really, they can be easily used as long as more than one manufacturer can provide products. And this is a very common way of specifying. Now, it's important to note that a proprietary spec that is pretending to be a performance spec is not considered non-restrictive. Similarly, a closed method is not considered non-restrictive. Specification language. Well, a lot of people say it's Greek to me. It's generally abbreviated and curt and is not written as a novel or with prose. And here we come back to absolutely a question, and again, clear, complete, concise, correct. Writing style and sentence structure. Your writing style, it's simple, accurate, brief, simple sentence. Be clear about intent through words and terms. And sentence structure, there are two that are used. Imperative mood, where do the work. Indicative mood, the contractor shall do the work. There is a less and less use of the contractor shall in projects and even in government work, and that's a good thing. They're taking out words that really don't belong.
In specification, it's a good idea to avoid abbreviation. It used to be, and also avoid symbols. It used to be because of poor photocopying. But the fact is that in specifications, unlike drawing, you could spell out the entire word. It helps clarify things, making sure people don't have a misunderstanding of what that abbreviation means or what that symbol is about. Important to minimize parentheses or quotes. I've used in practice that the only thing I've ever put quotes on was colored. So when I call out something that was white, put that in quote. Do not underline. Do not try to make one particular sentence more important than another. Remember, they're all complementary and they all work together. Use numerals where possible for numbers. Use written words when defining a size or a quantity. And be consistent with your capitalization. Just standard English. But keep in mind that there are proper nouns and proper names defined in the conditions of the contract. Like the contractor is always spelled with a capital C. The architect is always spelled with a capital A. The owner is always spelled with a capital O because you're defining particular parties within the contract.
Punctuation grammar. Observe formal rules of punctuation. Construct sentences so that displacement or elimination of punctuation marks will not change the meaning. And use proper grammar. Sometimes that may be a painful thing to do, but it is important because words have meaning. Inappropriate terms. Some of my favorites. As approved. Herein before. Etc. As per. In a workmanlike manner to the satisfaction of. By others. I think you could make a heck of a business as a contractor by being called by others. You can make a lot of money that way, but these things don't belong. Again, it's well intentioned, but it's poor practice. Avoid this at all costs. Do not say things like using the best workmanship ever or something similar. And I've seen that. I saw that recently.
And keep in mind, be careful about using the word any as what you mean by describing all. If you say replace any light bulb that are missing, that leaves it up to the contractor to select which ones they want. That's actually the proper English associated with it. So you need to say, replace all light bulbs that are missing.
More on grammar. Here's a question. Who is them? Who is them others? Or who's those guys? Or do you actually mean the five guys? And will you be showing up at the restaurant for a cheeseburger? Unnecessary words, prepositional phrases, and streamlining. And again, these are words to avoid. Shorten sentence. Brevity is the key. Think in minimal terms. If you want to think in maximal terms, do that, and then edit the heck out of it, because say what you mean and mean what you say.
And here's a perfect example. I just gave you an example of saying replace all missing light bulb. Say replace missing light bulb. Don't even need to use the word all.
Misuse terms. Party, entity. Replace and provide new. And you've got to be very, very careful in the use of these terms. They have distinct meanings, and you want to make sure you're not, violating what these meanings are, or you're saying something that could be confusing, such as replace and provide new. It opens it up to unintended meanings, to RFIs, and who knows, potentially change orders.
And using the word replace the light fixture, they can take it out and put it back in again. They've replaced it. Or used it someplace else.
Yes.
Another location.
And again, here's more misuse terms, and these are rather obvious. Same thing here. And now the last two, and the V1 on the next slide, insure, usher, and ensure. They are not the same things. Do not say you're going to insure something because you're not an insurance agent. I don't think you want to assure anybody of something, because that's an exposure, who knows, to liability. Ensure is really is going to be, as we'll see on the next slide, a direction.
And keep in mind that the word provide, which we always infer to mean to supply and install, really just means furnish, supply, and make available.
Technically, yeah.
Technically. So yes. It's not uncommon to actually up front in the specifications and even the reference section, in section 014000, to change the terminology, change the definition of the term, and you can change the term provide to mean furnish and supply. Furnish and install.
And that's one of the great values of having your Division I documents for administrative and procedural requirement to control the true technical specifications that follow.
Use the term amount when you're talking about money. You're talking about number of items. Use the term quantity. Again, any means a limited number selected by the discretion of the reader. Keep in mind that and joins things together. Use the word balance when talking about money. Remainder is preferred to that which is left over. Don't use either or when you actually want both. In America, we love to use the word flammable, but the proper English word is inflammable. Don't call them shop drawings when you really mean submittals. Includes samples and the product data, the manufacturer's installation instructions. Don't call them plans when you really mean the whole drawing. Include the sections and the elevations and the details. Don't call them the spec when they actually have the project manual and you have the contract in Division 0 in there. If you call it drywall on the drawing and you call it chipboard in the specifications, you have not specified that product. Don't call it sheetrock either.
And we're talking about, these are generic terms versus the trade terms that are really not generic terms, and similarly using misused words or figures and numbers and not doing that correctly. Quite often that will show up in manufacturer specifications, and that's another reason you really don't want to use them. They're going to take their own liberties. Construction documents, the hierarchy of general, administrative, and procedural requirements.
We talked about this a little bit the last time. We talked about the general, the fact that you have the general requirement, the general conditions at the top. They are part of the agreement and the conditions of the contract. General requirements is division 01, which is actually part of the specification. And then within the individual specifications, there's part 1, general, which expands upon division 1.
And this can be looked at in a way as going from broad to more refined to precise.
Here's just another example of it. You've seen this graph a few times. Keep in mind that the general conditions of the contract govern both Division 01 and the specification. Division 1 governs the individual text specification section. For example, in the conditions of a contract, they say submit shop drawings. Division 01 says submit 7 copies of the shop drawing for the digital copy. And in the spec section, it'll talk about submit installer's qualifications, submit the shop drawings at a certain scale.
And this is a perfect example of where you shouldn't be saying things in 2 different locations. Often, and you may see this in consultant specifications, they'll talk about submittals and they'll give you the number of submittals and the format that they're supposed to be delivered in, and that is in Division 01 only.
We talk about the governing, again, how the process goes.
Section format. Section format and page format are part of the Master Specification family of standards developed by CSI. And you want to make sure that you understand which is used where. And the key to these formats is uniform location of materials, so that when you go from one section to another, it is clear where the information will be located. This will be a question. The section format was developed by CSI, and as you'll see on the slide, it's a uniform structure to organizing specification information. It's in a 3-part format. General, part 1, products is part 2, execution is part 3. There is no part 4, part 5, or part 6, or part 7, and sometimes you will see that. Sometimes the manufacturers spec. Briefly, it's a 3-part format. Part 1, general, part 2, products, part 3, execution. There will be no parts 4, 5, and 6. Sometimes you will see, especially with manufacturer specifications, some offices will add extra parts. We don't do that. 3 parts. Now, in section format, as you can see on screen, the rather direct. Part 1, general. Part 2, products. And in part 1, you have scope of work, submittals, references, the quality assurance submittals, and general requirements related to the products, delivery, and storage is also in part 1. And then, now, while source quality control submittals would be in part 1, since this requirement is a submittal, note that the figures shown within the PDG, that warranty is not listed in part 1, but is listed in part 2. This will need further review. There's an inconsistency here. The key might be that a sample warranty submittal may be required, but not the terms of the warranty. Part 3 deals with the installation requirements and execution for the work. And important to note that, and this is going to be on the exam, fuel quality control is in this part. And these provisions of the specification are not meant to dictate means, methods, techniques, sequences, and procedures, which are totally in the purview of the contractor. And we want you to remember that quality control deals with completed elements. And note that the examination is a quality assurance activity. And part 3 is also where you will commonly find schedules, such as a hardware schedule. And it does not become part 4. Page format. Again, developed by CSI, and this is a standardized format for arranging information on each specification page, and not to be confused with the section format. And the concept is to present text clearly for easy reading and rapid reference. It provides a flexible format, and it also it stays within the 4 C's, and how both section format and page format were developed with this in mind. Warranties. Warranties and guarantees. This has been a subject of great discussion forever. What is a warranty and what is a guarantee? Now, you see in your screen, you've got 3 definitions for warranty, and the last one is the one that would pertain to a project manual. And the Uniform Commercial Code, developed by the federal government, governs contracts dealing with the sale of goods, and it to provide a consistency in commercial transactions across 50 states. And UCC provides equality between states on laws governing products, goods, and services provided. For example, goods may be manufactured in state A, warehoused in state B, and then sold from state C and delivered in state D. The UCC really achieved the goal of uniformity in commercial laws, and provide a process that would make sense. Now, in warranties, there are really 2 types of warranties. There's the express warranty, and then there's the implied warranty. And as it says on screen, the express warranty is an affirmation or promise, such as the claim of performance. Implied warranties, and you'll see this very often if you go to a store and buy a product, and it has this little slip there. It talks about warranties, that they will not warranty for fitness for particular use or for merchantability. Implied warranties have to be looked at very, very, very carefully. Here's let's say an example would be a fruit that looks and smells good, but its hidden defects would violate the implied warranty of merchantability if its quality does not meet the standards of such fruit. Guarantee and warranty are, yes, they are used interchangeably all the time. It's important to note that a guarantee is a separate contract. It's by a third party, assuming responsibility. As an example, of course, would be a general contractor. And a warranty is an assurance by a principal to assume stipulated responsibilities for completed portions of the work. Let's say, for an example, a roofing manufacturer offering a 15-year warranty. Now, the manufacturer will warrant its products, and you have to be careful with these warranties. Manufacturers will have their own standard warranty form, and you have to review that against what the intent is for your specification, whether or not this will include the labor or if it's just materials only, and if it's prorated, where there's a diminishing value for replacement cost during the terms of the warranty itself. Now, construction warranties, this will be on the exam. A contractor warrants product that they will be new, of good quality, free of defects, and they will conform to the contract document. The contractor is responsible for defective work. Very important. It begins on the date of substantial completion, not the final completion of punch work. And this extends until the end of the one-year correction period, not a warranty period for the older version of the AIA General Conditions 201 document.
So the big question becomes, too, what happens when an owner takes partial occupancy of building for beneficial use?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And there may be some negotiations of that date when the warranty starts.
Mm-hmm.
One example in particular to consider is elevator manufacturers will provide a warranty, and they will provide a warranty from the date that elevator is put in use. Well, the contractor is going to be using that elevator to haul their materials up for sometimes several months. And so you need to be cognizant of the fact that just because they've done that, that doesn't mean it gives them an extension or lessens the duration of their warranty. Their warranty starts when the substantial completion happens.
In a variation on that, you'll have some manufacturers with their product will have warranties that state that the warranty starts from the time that they ship it out of their plant.
Exactly.
Construction warranties. Extended warranties can be specified for a specific product.
Yeah, it's pretty common to see roofing, waterproofing,
Absolutely.
Painting systems have extended warranties. This is in contrast with the general contractor's 12-month or 18-month correction period, usually a 12 months, but can be extended if needed some additional period of time. But these warranties are extended. They may be prorated or they may be NDOs or no dollar limit. Generally, these are prorated, meaning that they decrease in the replacement cost afforded based on appreciation or beneficial use. Keep in mind that construction warranties are written by the construction product manufacturer's lawyer, and they're thinking of every possible way of getting out of having a claim against them. I always use a perfect example of a warranty on a roof that says that it's voided if there's animal infestation on the roof. Well, that would make sense, except for the fact that pigeons were roosting up there, and their droppings were all over it, and they use that as an example of animal infestation.
Right, so it'd be very important as you're developing a specification section, and particularly warranties, that beforehand, if you're looking at a particular product from a particular manufacturer for a particular warranty, you talk with the manufacturer, and you want to see what their standard form is, and then go from there to see if they would provide warranties based on what the project requirements are.
Keep in mind that warranties cannot guarantee a good product. Okay, they cannot guarantee a good installation, and they're usually worth as much paper as they're written upon. Again, they're written by the manufacturer's lawyers to limit their exposure. I gave you the example of the animal infestation. An easy out is if they have required maintenance, and then an easy out too is if they, the product experienced wind speed over 72 miles an hour.
Roofing.
Well, that's the minimum wind speed of anywhere in the United States, 72 miles an hour. So it's going to be exceeded. they could easily claim that by just looking at the historical weather data with it. I always like to say that Saran wrap, when properly installed, makes a really good roof. But do you really want to have it?
Right, and manufacturers, they won't tell you that quite often, but they will provide riders, which would, for roofing, they will call a wind rider, for the particular geographical location of the project. But you do have to ask the question. Construction insurance. During construction, the owner's interest is protected by requiring the contractor to carry certain kinds of insurance, and within the limits adequate to circumstance. And it's very important that the owner's insurance consultant review the insurance requirements for the project. This is to avoid lapse in coverage or duplications of coverage and, again, unintended consequences. Liability insurance could be a test question. It protects named insured from losses arising out of legal liability to others caused by the insured activity. Commonly includes workers' compensation, automobile, and owner's protective liability. And general liability. And here the insurance company agrees to pay all sums for which the insured becomes legally obligated to pay as damages. And the two types of coverage are occurrence-based and claims-based. The occurrence policy's coverage trigger is tied, and this is important, is tied to the date of the event or accident giving rise to the claim. Under an occurrence contract, the policy in force on the date of the event causing the loss must respond with both defense and indemnity. The claim may arise years later after the policy has expired. And the occurrence coverage trigger places little or no importance on the date of the insured receives notice of the claim. Now, concerning claims made policies, the determination of coverage is triggered by the date you first became aware and notified the insurer of a claim or potential claim. The insurer's policy in force on the date you became aware and give notice is the insurer who must defend and settle the claim. Therefore, the professional liability insurance policies become more expensive the longer an architect is in business and is dependent on the types of projects you work on. Property insurance, common types of property insurance. Builder's risk,
which, by the way, is paid for by the owner.
Mm-hmm.
It confuses people quite a lot because they say, well, it's the builder's risk. It's paid for by the owner, and it's there to protect the improvement on the owner's property.
Boiler and machinery, contractors' general property and equipment, any business interruption, and umbrella excess liability, and this will be a test question. Now, we've reviewed several different things, as noted on this slide.
Do we have any questions?
Yes.
Well, Steve, you must have done a great job because I don't see any questions.
No, okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We will see you next week.